Hello, Melton Guy here with yet another little podcast. I want to do some house cleaning before I get started. I want to tell you about my book, which I usually reserve for the ending, but today I'm going to go ahead and talk about it, The Offspring of Ignorance, which you can find on Amazon. And I have heard that from some that they liked it, some that disagree with a lot of it, and some all of it. But I think that if you can get past the fact that it is controversial to some degree, I think you will enjoy it. I think you will learn something. But The Offspring of Ignorance that you can find on Amazon, please go out, check it out, buy it, and then share it. Also, normally don't do this, but I wanted to talk about another book. This is a book that was written by my wife, Sue Guy, and it's called Leaving Small Town. If you've ever lived in a small town or you know anything about small towns, especially small towns that have begun to take on some of the characteristics of larger towns or cities, seeing some of the things in a small town that normally you would only see in the city or in more urbanized places. But anyway, Leaving Small Town, many have commented on how much they love this book. I loved it. Well written. And most people say when they read it, when are you going to write the sequel? And I think you will enjoy it if you'll go out on Amazon and find Leaving Small Town by Sue Guy, as I said, my wife. Now on to the things of today that I want to talk about. I thought when I was a young man with innocent ideals and high-minded dreams, I thought this cancer we call racism would disappear in my lifetime. Eventually, I thought it might have to die out. And I was okay with that. That was kind of the compromise I made since I was not going to see it immediately. But it would have to die out. But now, I'm even skeptical about that. Because now I realize now, and I'm still hoping I'm wrong, that racism will always be a reality. Maybe it lies beneath the surface at times. Maybe it disguises itself to fool the masses. Maybe we can't help ourselves. I don't know. But that sounds so sad and defeatist that we can't help ourselves. But you know, some of us actually want to stomp it out of existence, above and below the surface, out of existence in minds, in language, in spirit, in church, in politics, in school, and in our homes. But you know, saying all that and facing reality, when racism decides to raise its ugly head, there are enough ignorant, loveless, and cruel people to fully embrace it, feed it, and become advocates of the worst of sins. Sometimes blindly, sometimes joyfully, and as we have seen recently, sometimes recklessly. Since the news of Kamala Harris becoming the presumptive nominee of the Democratic Party for president, saying all I said before, even after saying all that, even after all of that, I am absolutely shocked at the way racism reared its ugly head on a new front and did so for all to see. Racism. The New Oxford Dictionary defines the word as thus: prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism by an individual, community, or institution against a person or people on the basis of their membership in a particular racial or ethnic group, typically one that is a minority or marginalized. And it goes on to add this: the belief that different races, talking about racism, the belief that different races possess distinct characteristics, abilities, or qualities, especially so as to distinguish them as inferior or even superior to one another. But you know, those definitions out of the Oxford Dictionary, the New Oxford Dictionary, it's just too damn pretty. Too damn pretty of a defining of something so horrendous, so disgusting, so infectious, and so stupid and ignorant. But I say, well, there's one word, and even it does not move these beasts who are the epitome of evil. And that word is hate. Yes, hate. Oh, for sure. It manifests itself in different forms and in different ways. You all know that. We see it. We see it on every level in our country. Even the border crisis. It's not about the border and what's ours and what's theirs. It's because there are enough people who hate Hispanics or others who cross that border, who try to cross that border for a better life, are not white and probably Protestant, which used to be the way it was with many people if you weren't white and Protestant. Now we're seeing some of that coming back. It makes me sick, and it should make you sick. But the border crisis is a product of racism, which is hatred for another human being or another whole group of people. Even the book burnings that we have heard about is because people do not want to know how they treated other individuals in the past to grasp and make this country grow. What it took in their minds to make this country grow. They don't want you to know the cruelty. They don't want you to know the good and the bad of it all. Only the good. Book bannings, the same thing. They don't want you to know. They're racist. They are racist. And I'll say it till the day I die, they are racist for this kind of thing. Or they're just putting on a big show. You know, even the movements that we see against those that have come out and call themselves now transgender, although it is not typically race and is not defined by race, it is that hatred that grows in us because of our understanding, of our misunderstanding, I would say, of other people who are just like us in every way, except they choose to live a different lifestyle, or they have a different skin color, or they come from a different country, or they belong to a different religion, but they're just like us, but we hate them because they're not just like us. Elon Musk talked about losing his son because he transitioned and is now transgender. He talks about losing his son, how his son died, which I take offense. I lost a son because he couldn't get into intensive care to be intubated because of unvaccinated COVID patients, and we know who's the cause of that. I would love my son. I don't care if he transitioned into an elephant or a tiger or a bull or a snake. I love my son and I would love to have him here. I don't care if he prefers men or prefers women or a different lifestyle. I love my son and I would take him back under any circumstances. And for Elon Musk to talk about his son being dead is an offense to me and to many others who've actually lost children through death, and a lot of it because of COVID, because of the lack of good handling of the COVID crisis. Now, I heard Donald Trump talking to Christians, calling them Christians. Get out and vote. If you'll do it this time, we'll make it right and you'll never have to vote again. And that's not the issue today for me about his idea that you'll never have to vote again. It's a scary. But I'm going to do like him. And I'm going to say, Christians, you can listen to this man, or you can do what you always said you do, and that is live by the word. And you cannot compare the two and make them exist together. You want to be a good Christian? I'm calling on you Christians. You want to be a good Christian in accordance with the Bible by which you say you live? Well, I'll tell you how. Be the conscience of those around you. In church, in the factory, in the office, or in the home. Be the conscience of those who would bend to the pressure of racism, who would rationalize the acceptance of racism, to the apathetic when it comes to racism, to those who have chosen ignorance, who actually decided racism is all right because my daddy or my granddaddy lived that way and said it was all right. As I said, racism rears its ugly head in many different shapes and forms. The words, and I don't know why I was shocked after what I've heard from Donald Trump and all these years and things he said and the people who support him and the things they said. I don't know why I was shocked, but the words used to speak of Vice President Kamala Harris, I've heard those words all my life by people who will say, I'm not a racist. Who also said, I have nothing against colored people, which is another term that came out of our own Congress just recently, which is scary. Those who said, I have nothing against colored people, as long as they keep their place. Or they say, I have nothing against them. I don't want any of them dating or even associating with my family. I've heard that all my life. I'm kind of hearing hints of that, or the possibility of that kind of thing coming back after the words used against Kamala Harris, our vice president running for president. Racial remarks that should be beneath every Christian, should be beneath every decent human being. I heard back in the day, well, let them just leave us alone. We'll leave them alone. They have their schools and they have their churches. Well, they also had their own drinking fountains and sometimes their own restrooms. Now, skipping forward a little, the worst uprising I ever had as a pastor was the time I invited a choir from one of the local black churches to sing during our revival. An uprising caused by good old Christians. But let's get real. This quality of racism against Vice President Harris is only the latest. Racism goes so much deeper and is so much broader than the black-white issue or the black-white horrors, call it what it is. As I've said, those politicians and those in agreement with those politicians speaking out in ignorance in regard to the terminology that gave us woke, gave us that woke crap, are absolutely the very ones who need to be woke, or however you should say that. My opinion is, though it is shrouded in bullshit excuses and explanations, these people are suffering from a very bad case of racism. Florida, the state in which I was born, should be ashamed of allowing an angry, racist governor to say Florida is where woke comes to die. But that's only the beginning of such hateful comments. And it's all in the attitude. It allows, or better yet, gives permission to refer to the border crisis as the creeping in of vermin. A whole race of people described in one word by a man who cares nothing about you or me or this country, but only power. Donald Trump has a cesspool of people like Ron DeSantis to believe and pass on the hatred fueled by his lies of countries emptying their prisons and their asylums into the United States. But getting real, it is about hatred for anyone or anything, not like us, for lack of a better way of putting it. Woke, the idea of woke, is just another tool in the hands of racist haters. History is not to be left in the past. If we ever want to root out racism of all kinds and wipe it from the face of the world, all kinds, all shapes, all forms, in all places, because if one shred is left, it will surely grow and grow fast. And I know this because, why? History, truthful and comprehensive, tells me so. I'm not doing it for you. No, you go out and find the books, find the information. It's out there. Find the real history books and real books outlining the ways this nation grew. You know, get a book that tells you the good, the bad, and the ugly. Oh, I could read and write it down and pass it on to you. And I'm speaking to the you who will immediately recognize themselves in these words, whether it's admitted or not. But to the you, I'm saying, listening is not your forte. And if I find it all, write it in my notes, and then pass it on here in my podcast, I'm just another somebody you will not hear. Just like all the other somebodies that tried to make you hear, tried to make you listen. So I'm saying, get up off your lazy ass and find that book or many books. Or I'll ask you, are you afraid to find the truth? Now you can say hogwash, bullshit, or some other phrase to talk yourself out of finally learning the truth. Yes, you can do that. You can continue to belong to that club that I call the Chosen Ignorance Club. Listen, racism and hate walk hand in hand. Sometimes hate leads to racism, sometimes racism leads to hate. Regardless, either way, it leads to violence and destruction. But whichever, those that have already made racist gestures, spoken racist words such as many high-profile Republicans, even at the top, referring to Vice President Harris in such derogatory ways, if your conscience has not kicked in, then you belong to that group I refer to as you or they. And I have to ask, how do you live with so much hatred in your heart and in your head? How do you sleep at night? Christians who say you live in the Word, how do you sleep at night if you're one of those you or they? Believe me, I can honestly say to you and all, I love you and I want the best for you. I want peace, but most of all, I want what I've wanted all my life, as far back as I can remember. What I really, really want is to wake up one morning to a world without hate and racism. I hope you will join me in that hope and pray in that direction. Can we ever see a time when we could wake up without such hatred and racism, and let those get by who are calling Kamala Harris the names they're calling her and say it's okay? Can't do that. A Christian can't do that. I think we should pray for that and hope for that for our nation. No hate, no racism. Just walking hand in hand, trying to live a life together. Thank you. Yet, I keep a prayer list in which we pray for those we really need to get to heaven, because, as I said, if they make it, we will all make it. That new name is John Hagee. Now, notice I did not say Reverend John Hagee, because if he is a reverend or a reverend, and I asked the question, who is it? If you don't know what I'm talking about, listen to this man sometimes and find the racism and the bigotry in his sermons from a pulpit in a church of Christians. So John Hagee added to that prayer list. And I thank you for listening to me. And if you will, give me a thumbs up or subscribe to this podcast. And there are others out there on YouTube, especially Tennessee Brando and Texas Paul. I wish you would listen to them and subscribe to what they're trying to tell you the truth. As I'm trying to tell you the truth, I'm trying to point out ways you can find that truth. But if you will, listen to them, subscribe to them, give them a thumbs up as you give a thumbs up to me. And as I said, remember the book by my wife, Leaving Small Town, my book, The Offspring of Ignorance. Both can be found on Amazon. The Offspring of Ignorance by J. Melton Guy, Leaving Small Town by Sue Guy, my lovely wife. As I said, I love you all. And I hope one day you'll all love me. Goodbye.